Welcome to your onboarding session around learning innovation. I'm Suzanne Smart. I'm the Learning Innovation Consultant for the Waterloo Catholic District School Board. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out by email. My email is suzanne.smart@wcdsb.ca. Today, what I'd like to go through are a few of the most important steps that can support you with anything related to teaching remotely or teaching online, whether it's a secondary or elementary, as well as some of the basic things that you need in order to do your job every day within the school board. The number one location I want you to be aware of is the WCDSB staff page. You can find this anywhere by going to wcdsb.ca and clicking on the staff button. This staff page will bring you to the login area for Staff My Apps. It includes our area for self-service authentication, which I highly recommend you register for. It will help you be able to set up to change your password if you forget it. And all of that information is there. So what I will do is actually show you what that looks like live on the website. So if we go to wcdsb.ca and you click on staff, this is where your Staff My Apps login. This is where you can also find your self-service authentication registration and information about how to change your password, as well as the staff self-service portal for IT help desk. The direct phone line is also there. I'm going to start by clicking on Staff My Apps, which will bring you to our landing page. This landing page is most important for you because this is where you will do attendance from. So Aspen will take you to the attendance. This applies regardless of whether you're in a face-to-face classroom situation or you're teaching a synchronous online setting. You will be doing attendance through Aspen, and this is the location for that. Additionally, if you need support, IT Help Desk portal is found here as well. And that will take you to this location here where you are able to complete a help desk ticket. You can see whether certain tools are up and running. Additionally, if you don't need to do a help desk ticket, you might look for support. So training resources are also embedded here. So for example, if I click on Google Apps, I can go to the support resource page, which covers anything related to our G Suite for Education, including Google Classroom and our Getting Started guide. It also includes some information on some of the other more commonly used tools which aren't G Suite, such as Microsoft Teams, which is used quite extensively within the board for synchronous learning sessions, as well as to Flipgrid, which is another asynchronous video tool. Additionally, our Meet guides in here, as well as support for Gmail and other tools. So that's an example of what you might find by going to IT Help Desk. Additionally, what I'd like to support you with is some other locations where you're likely to find resources to support your practice, especially concerning synchronous and asynchronous online learning that happens related to St. Isidore, as well as to secondary in the afternoons at all of our sites under the adapted schedule, as well as at some elementary sites that may be required to go remote at some point. So if you're in that situation, likely what you'll find is that teachers are using either Brightspace by D2L or Google Classroom as the primary learning management system in order to house all of the online resources. The first resource I'd like to show you is D2L because that launches right from our Staff My App page. And when we click on that, it will bring you to your home page. So mine has my courses at the top. You will see announcements. There's courses in other organizations. The course that I think that you'll be most interested in to begin with is this course here called Professional Learning LE. If you are not already automatically enrolled in this because you're new to our board, you can enroll in this by clicking on Discover, and you should be able to see that course there, and it is an open enrollment course. When you go to Professional Learning LE, what you will find is an area where we have announcements, including weekly office hours and links to all of those meetings. This is really important because this will be the location where you find support all year long. Every week, every day, there are different options for office hour supports. We try to make these supports available at lunchtime and after school times so that everybody has the opportunity to be supported in what they need to do. Additionally, within this course, you will see there's all sorts of getting ready, setup, content discussions, assistive technology, any resource to support your work through D2L, and some other sites are located within this area. It even includes a link to our framework for learning design, which is also found in Staffnet. This framework for learning design is the training environment and framework environment for all different situations in order to support educators with being ready to teach either in person, adapted, or in remote situations. And this will be updated in an ongoing manner throughout the year. More about that a little bit later. Also from the My Apps launch page, you will see Staffnet. Staffnet is the internal web area for WCDSB. Many different resources are housed within here, including HR and payroll information, mental health support information, work from home ergonomics, and all of those kinds of things. But the area that I would like to show you right now is this return to school area. This also is where our framework is housed, as well as other important resources to help you in your teaching throughout the year. The framework for learning design, like I said, is designed to support you in your work all year long. There are many different resources embedded within that area, and I will go through that in a minute. The educator communication for remote learning area has our communication guidelines for connecting with parents and students. It also houses our how-to for Teams and Meet, which you saw already in our Google support resource as well. You will find that in many cases, different resources are housed in multiple locations in order to help you find them with ease. Additionally, if you're looking for learning resources by subject, this will link to an area of multiple folders with documents with links to different online resources and tools that were provided by subject area consultants during Learn at Home in the spring, and these continue to be used as a resource for sharing. And then special education section has many how-to resources, and I'd like to show you what that one looks like right now. So if you need any support with anything related to special education for the 2020 school year, there are links to everything within here. So the first area is return to school. There are printable visual handouts and resources specific to COVID. There's an entire section related to assistive technology, especially read and write will be of importance for you if you're doing any teaching online, and the list goes on. So I just want you to have a sense of how extensive this particular area is of our return to school framework. And then finally, the assessment and evaluation area houses memos and support resources related to assessment and evaluation, especially as it pertains to this school year. You'll need to make sure you check dates very carefully because there are different policies from the spring to now. So it's really important to keep up to date with that. I do want to show you really briefly what you'll find in the framework for learning design. It is undergoing some changes right now that aren't yet published around a pivot plan. The pivot plan would be a checklist of things that you need to do in order to be prepared to move from an in-person teaching scenario to a fully remote teaching scenario. So you will see that in the updated version coming soon. But for now, this gives a really good sense of the resources that are available in there. The priorities of the school board this year were to start with building and maintaining a learning community and ensuring that strong communication channels are open. So each of these areas focus on that. The entire framework follows the same pattern. So it always gives you a sense of why first, and then if you want to learn more about building relationships, it follows a why, what, how framework for why you are asked to focus on that, what that could look like, how you would go about doing that, and then the resources to help you do that. And so each section of the framework has that same pattern to it. As somebody just getting started at the school board, I think these two areas are where I would begin. My role is especially with concerns to supporting communication and leveraging digital to do that. So one of the first things that we are asking everybody to do this year is to establish a learning hub using either Brightspace or Google Classroom. So if you go to this area of the framework, you will see the guides. So the communication guide that was also in the Staffnet resource is located here. Also the Getting Started guides for D2L and Google Classroom. This is a wonderful resource to help you. So if you are in an LTO position, you would need to determine whether you would like to use Brightspace by D2L or whether you would like to use Google Classroom as your learning management system. The D2L link will bring you to the professional learning course. The Google Classroom link will lead you to a Getting Started guide for Google Classroom, which has step-by-step everything that you need to do in order to set up your Google Classroom, and each area will open and close for you. In addition to this area and support for Google Classroom, there is also a Google Classroom that has been created for all occasional teachers and occasional DECEs. So this is the Google Classroom here. It's a place where there are a few announcements, and bundled there in case you forget after today's session, there is also the connection to some of the most popular areas of support. So the support site for Google Classroom, the link to the framework for learning design, some tools to help you for virtual meets and synchronous learning. So the education or documents, as well as located below the student support documents if you needed those to share in order to get started. So this, in our presentation, I'll share with you the join code to this Google Classroom, and this might provide you an area to get you started. Finally, the other area of the framework I do think it's really important to visit is this leveraging digital section. This goes through the difference between synchronous and asynchronous learning, gives some ideas around learning strategies and teaching strategies related to synchronous and asynchronous. It also gives you a link to the most commonly used digital tools, because within our guiding principles for leveraging digital, we've asked folks to make sure that they are deciding and being very discerning in which digital tools and resources they will use. So within here, there are steps to help you discern what is available to you, what is safe to use from a cybersecurity and privacy standpoint. And then we've provided you with the board provided tools, because we are asking that each school limits their use of additional apps and tools for this school year in order to support parents with not having to learn many different areas in addition to the Google Classroom or D2L environments. So this area is really important, especially if you find yourself teaching at St. Isidore or in a fully remote situation, or even if you're teaching those afternoon synchronous sessions. Let's go back here. So that all of those things launch from the staff apps page. Like the staff apps page, students also have My Apps page. This is an important area to direct students to. If you're teaching in an adapted or remote model, they also would go to students from the main website and click My Apps. This is also where they will find the self-service portal for being able to set up the ability to change their own passwords. It also has a link to our St. Isidore Virtual Learning School site with additional supports for them. Next, I think it's really important because we are in a situation where we are heavily reliant on technology. It's really important to note that we have a policy that you need to review. So this responsible use of information technology and electronic data policy applies to all students and staff at WCDSB. Please carefully review it. There's also a link to cybersecurity training for board employees. This is also important. This was due to be completed last January by all staff and should be available for you as new staff. Some highlights from the policy, because it is quite extensive, is really that student information should only ever be stored in board-provided tools. So when you looked at that framework for learning, there are some board-provided tools there. There are also links to other tools that you might be able to use but are not board-provided. And so for any tool that is yellow on our list, those are tools that we vetted as okay, but have provided usage notes that limit student information being included within that tool. Permission is required prior to using any tool with student that is not on that list. And if a tool cannot be anonymized, so if you cannot come up with a pseudonym, you cannot mask student identity within the tool, it may never be used. It will never pass our process for vetting tools. So only things from the list may be used. If you would like to use other things, you need to request that before using them, and know that if it cannot be used without student data, permission would not be granted. There is also a procedure for the purchase of all electronic computing devices. This includes software, it includes online applications, anything that's a subscription-based website. All of those purchases must go through the process outlined in APS 015. When you go to the help desk from the Staff My App page, there is a button to press for APS 015 to make a request. And educators should not be purchasing software devices or anything like that for student use outside of this process. It's really important to note. That also includes for teacher use that would have student data. Educators may not purchase those things or use even free tools that would have student data in it. So remember, if an application is free, it's not really free. Usually they are mining student data, and we are beholden to uphold the privacy of our student data. When you're at actual physical schools, Brightlinks are the projection tool that we use to project what you have on your computer screen up onto the big whiteboard screen for your students. So each classroom has a connected device. Usually it is a desktop. There are a few exceptions where it might be a Chromebook or other mobile device. There's a remote and a pen for each Brightlink. The features that you would need to note, so before you'd have any training, is that you can freeze the projection from the remote so that students can see what you're projecting while you act in other tabs on your device for private functions such as attendance, which should never appear on the Brightlinks. Additionally, if you want to turn it off, but for a short period of time, so you need to use the space to write on, for instance, you can press the mute button on the remote, and that will turn the light bulb off, but put it in standby mode so it loads up much quicker. Use this with care. You don't want to leave it muted for a long period of time because it can reduce the life of the bulb. And then make sure that you've always turned the Brightlink projector off when not in use. And then finally, there are some how-to videos and frequently asked question support for the Epson Brightlink tutorial types. The frequently asked questions are by series type. So if you're in a particular room, you should probably look at what model it is, because we do a refresh on a rotating basis. So there might be different versions of the Brightlinks in each room. Finally, new this year, all secondary classes have desktop computers that are equipped with a webcam that includes a microphone that can be used for synchronous teaching sessions in the afternoon. So this is the location where those afternoon classes are taught from. Elementary classrooms will also be equipped with these webcams to facilitate remote learning if we end up in a remote learning situation, so that staff can still teach from their classrooms if they need to. This is especially true for those who might not have stable internet at home. The webcams with microphones can also be utilized for virtual field trips, virtual live announcements, liturgies, and other school culture building activities. So ideally, if you're an occasional teacher coming in, you wouldn't have to worry about the webcam itself, because you wouldn't be presenting these materials in this way, but you might be receiving a virtual liturgy, which means you would be using the Brightlinks to project and to join a Google Meet or a Teams meeting that is being hosted from elsewhere within the school in order to have a live liturgy or live announcement for your students. You could conceivably be in a situation where your students are delivering that kind of information, but that is less likely. It is important to note that the webcams and microphones are not used for live streaming of face-to-face classes, and you should not be asked to do any live streaming of a face-to-face class. Finally, where do you find some additional resources? So our WCDSB Virtual Learning Commons and Resource Center is our library service area. There are many kits and devices to support the use of technology and hands-on learning in your classes. You really should check out the resources available there, especially if you have an LTO. You'll want to know what is available there for use by your classroom. Also, the school-based library learning commons at elementary and the libraries at secondary have gone through significant refreshment. They're beautiful spaces. They house many shared resources that can be used there or can be signed out for classroom use. And even with COVID protocols, there are still many tools that you're able to use from within the library learning commons. So it's really important to talk to your amazing library tech or librarian about what offerings may be available. They're also wonderful people to support remote and synchronous learning and the use of library provided tools through single sign-on. Additional resources. So I did go through the return to school area in Staffnet, so I just want to remind you of that. That is where the framework for learning design, educator communication for remote learning, learning resources by subject, special education, and assessment and evaluation resources are housed. Additionally, we know there is the Google Classroom for occasional teachers and occasional DECEs, and the join code is all lowercase here, GIILT7U. And if you go to Google Classroom, so the location to get there is from the Staff My Apps, you would go to Google Apps, and then you would go to the App Launcher page, so the waffle in the upper right-hand corner, and click on Classroom. And from there, you should be able to see join a class. And if you type in that code, you will be added to the occasional teacher classroom. If you have trouble getting there, please email me and I'll be happy to send you the direct link into our occasional teacher classroom. And finally, last but not least, I want to remind you of that D2L professional learning course. You would go to Discover to self-enroll in that course. Michelle Booth is the contact for anything related to D2L for support, but located within that classroom are the office hour links posted to support that I can provide for any open questions, as well as our other great consultants. So Michael Leonard is another innovation consultant and experiential learning lead for the board. And Matt Figueredo often hosts office hours within there as well. And he is your new teacher support consultant as well, the NTIP lead for our board. So between Michelle, Matthew Figueredo, Michael Leonard, and myself, we're really happy to support any of your needs as a new teacher with our board. If you have any questions, again, please do not hesitate to reach out. My email is suzanne.smart@wcdsb.ca.